We are beginning a new book today. It's called The Oversoul 7 Trilogy, The Education of Oversoul 7 to Further Education of Oversoul 7, Oversoul 7 and the Museum of Time. Those are the three books all wrapped in one. This was a channeled book, meaning that this woman essentially had automatic writing or something. She was channeling some consciousness from somewhere, and she channeled this entire book or this entire series. So this isn't really from her own mind, it's from some channeled being elsewhere, allegedly. And we will find the first page. Chapter 1. Oversoul 7's Examination of Yosef's Dream. Oversoul 7 grimaced at Cyprus and began the examination. Let's see, he said, in Earth terms, using an analogy. I'm a man of Wednesday and Friday, a woman on Sunday and Thursday, and I'll have the rest of the time off for independent study. Actually, because of their time concepts, this is somewhat more complicated, he said. Each life is lived in a different area of time to which various designations are given. Cyprus smiled, and 7 continued. As Lydia, I'm in the 20th century, as Yosef in the 17th, and Ma'a in 35,000 BC, and as Proteus in the 23rd century AD. Then there's the future. Then there's the further background in space, different locations called countries. Then there's the ages of the personalities. I'm partial to Yosef and Lydia. Those I suppose I shouldn't be. Still, they show so much vitality and seem to enjoy themselves. Ma'a cries a lot, and Proteus is always looking back to the good old days. Cyprus has been silent now, she said. You're wandering and not organizing your thoughts very well. Pretend that I know nothing about all this, and you're trying to explain it. You just told me that you had personalities in all those times. For example, why should Proteus look back to the good old days? Oh, I see. Sorry. Oversoul 7 said. Proteus doesn't know that. He doesn't take anything for granted. He doesn't even take me for granted, or himself for that matter. That is, he doesn't realize that he is a soul, much less that both of us are one. Certainly, he does not know that other portions of us live in other times. I get lonely for him now and then, but there it is. In fact, sometimes I think we oversouls aren't appreciated at all. We work and strive. 7 was suddenly struck by such a sense of desolation that he dematerialized his hallucinatory pencil. He brought it back as quickly as he could, but Cyprus shook her head at the lapse and said sharply, Now none of that. Dropping your hallucination loses you 5 points, you know. Suppose you were, say, Lydia on Earth, and she did something like that. Physically, matter wouldn't be a dependable framework at all. One slip, that's all it takes. How would you like to be responsible for such a massive reaction? Then everyone would have to start all over with a new... Oh, 7, you just can't make errors like that. Pencils disappearing in midair. Oversoul 7 nodded, then suddenly, almost despite himself, he started to laugh. Actually, Yosef is almost on the edge of knowing. Once he forgot to materialize one of his painting brushes. He was in the throes of creativity, and bongo, the brush, was just gone. Yosef almost went out of his mind. 7's eyes glowed with parental-like pride. Cyprus said sternly, None of your personalities are ready to understand the mind forms matter, and you know it. I hope you remedied the situation. I hallucinated the brush back at once, Oversoul 7 said, but tell me Don't you find the affair even a little bit funny? Not at all, Cypress said, concealing a smile. But now let's get back to your examination. Gladly, Oversoul 7 said. But when I reach your position, I hope I retain my sense of humor. Cypress laughed. She laughed so hard that Seven got uncomfortable. Finally, she said, your sense of humor includes only a small part of my sense of humor. There's so much you don't see. This examination of yours, for example, oh bless me, and having to maintain Earth-type conditions for it. Now that's funny, by the way. Look around this room. There's something else that quite there's something else that quite escapes you. Your visual is awful. Oversoul 7 looked around cautiously. He'd been secretly quite pleased with the environment he'd chosen and created. The classroom was authentic 20th century, like the one Lydia knew as a child. There were rows of desks, blackboards, windows, everything right down to the stacks of paper, all individual new sheets, and an automatic pencil sharpener. Then he blushed all over his nice new cheeks and right up to the roots of the thick brown hair that sprang up from his forehead. Nice effect, Cypress said, watching. I meant to congratulate you on your form. Very good 14-year-old maple type Caucasian, I believe, but for the other I found it the error. There. The waste paper basket had been in the corner with complete with girth and thickness, exactly 2 feet high and as many around, but he'd forgotten to materialize it visually. Now he made it red and with a flourish added scallops around the upper edge. But there's still another error, Cypress said, looking nowhere in particular. Just at that moment, a young man wearing a toga appeared. He looked around with a rather wild air, then shouted at Seven, Ah, there you are. I knew I'd find you again just the same. All this has to stop. He looked half mad, and yelled in tones of deepest outrage. Cypress raised her eyebrows at Oversoul 7, who coughed several times and tried to look the other way. Excuse me. Well, shouted the young man. How did you get there? Seven asked. Then he whispered urgently to Cypress, That's Yosef. He must be in a dreaming state and sleeping on earth. How did I get here? You tell me, Yosef cried angrily. Next time I'm going to memorize the route. I see you in my dreams too often for comfort. Dreams aren't supposed to work that way, he broke off, frowning. I am dreaming, aren't I? I must be. What a crazy place. What on earth is that? He was staring at the automatic pencil sharpener. Don't touch it. It's not on Earth. That's the point, Seven cried. But Yosef was fascinated. It's authentic 20th century, Seven said, giving in. Works by electricity, Cypress moaned. I believe that Yosef is your 17th century personality, she said. Electricity isn't used there. Oversoul 7 blushed and dematerialized the pencil sharpener. Just forget you saw it. Forget the whole thing, he said to Yosef. Where did it go? Yosef stood staring. Listen, you aren't supposed to be here. Not here, of all places. I get demerits for this, Oversoul 7 said. Go home. Go back to your body where you belong. What do you mean, go back to my body? Yosef demanded. He rose to his full stature and adjusted his toga with a dramatic gesture. This is my dream, and nobody's going to put me out of it. Why are you wearing a toga? Cypress asked gently. Yosef looked down at himself with some amazement. I don't know. I didn't realize that I had one on. I like to paint models in togas, though. You can do so much with the folds. He broke off angry again. You aren't answering my questions at all. What's happening? How is it that I meet you in my dreams? He paused and shook his head. Excuse me. Whew. You look like a boy now, but in my dreams, he paused and shook his head. Nope. You look like a boy now, but most of the time you look like an old man. You can't fool me, though. You're the same one. I've told you before, but you never remember, Seven said. I'm something like your mother and something like your father, but neither. We're closer than sister and brother, mother and daughter, or father and son. That's all I can tell you now. You have to learn some things for yourself. You are learning fast, but you wandered in where you shouldn't be. I know you had a reason, though. You never look for me unless you were in trouble. Seven caught the rebuke in his own voice and added quickly, That's all right. I understand. But what's bothering you? He looked around to see if Cypress approved of the way he was handling the situation, but Cypress had sympathetically dematerialized. Yosef never noticed, he said mournfully. I'm 24 and I don't have any discipline. I can't keep myself in my easel 2 hours at a time, yet painting is what I want to do more than anything else in the world. If I don't learn some discipline, I'm afraid I'll lose what talent I have, and God knows how much that is to begin with. On top of that, I haven't felt any real inspiration for a year. Seven shook his head. Before his eyes, Yosef was turning into a big, unhappy bear, in his dark mustache transformed into fur, his eyes belligerent and sad at the same time, his toga changing into a blanket. Yosef looked down at himself hysterically. Am I a circus bear? Something for people to laugh at? Oh, what a dream. It's got to be a dream. Then the bear growled threateningly. Come on now, Seven said, and patted its head. Turn back into yourself. In the dream state, you take different forms as your feelings and thoughts change. You felt like a bear, so you look like one. Really? Joseph asked. Really? Joseph was himself again. Immediately he forgot what happened. If I don't do something, I'm going to ruin my life, he said. Oh, you can't do that, Oversoul 7 said. You aren't aware of your real problem yet. It's one of my jobs to help you, so I'll get back to you shortly. In the meantime, I'll do some little thing to tide you over. As he spoke to Oversoul 7, as he spoke, Oversoul 7 created in his mind an excellent art studio made to Yosef's personal requirements. On the easel was a painting of the precise farmhouse in which Yosef was staying on earth. The painting was signed in the corner, Yosef Lansdatter, 1615. Now I've made this dream for you, Seven said. Look at the painting well. You'll begin work on it tomorrow. You'll be so filled with inspiration that you'll paint all day. He transmitted the dream to Yosef telepathically, then said, When you get all you want out of the dream, then wake up in your bedroom. Yosef nodded and dutifully disappeared. What did you think of him? Seven asked. Cypress laughed richly, then returned visually. Well, I see the similarity between the two of you, she said. Stop joking. He has a serious problem. That's something else about you, Seven, Cypress said. Your sense of humor doesn't extend to yourself or your personalities. By the time you reach Oversoul 8 stage, you'll know better. You did handle the situation well, however. I worry about Yosef, Seven said. He's so impetuous, as you are, Cypress said. Remember, your various personalities, while independent, also reflect qualities of your own. You can't create without giving of yourself. Now, technically, you do get 3 demerits, she said. You should have been aware of Yosef's approach and waylaid him, but rules are also flexible, as his achievement is noteworthy regardless of the circumstances, so I'll note that in your files. The schoolroom environment was also well done, though I'm waiting for you to discover your one other error. Your appearance as the 14-year-old male was symbolically valid. You've demonstrated that you have an excellent understanding of Earth's conventions. Let's dispense with them now, though, and get down to more serious aspects of your examination. As Cypress spoke, the room disappeared, and the trees outside the windows. Last to go was the waste paper basket with all the scalloped edges. A lovely touch, Seven thought, feeling a bit of dismay as it vanished. Now, Oversoul 7 and Cypress were two brilliant points of consciousness without form. Oversoul 7 felt himself expand mentally, psychically. He breathed a symbolic sigh of relief. He and Cypress communicated telepathically through the use of mental images that changed with each alteration of meaning, and were instantly perceived and understood in Earth terms. It boiled down to this conversation. Creating yourself physically certainly is demanding, Seven said. But even now, when I'm not earthbound orientated, I can appreciate Yosef and all the rest, and feel the splendid growth of their vitality. I know how you want to handle this part of the examination, Cypress said, but remember, you can't contact any of your people. If they contact you, that's all right, but you can't correct any of their errors. I want to see how they're progressing, so this part of the exam involves you only as a bystander. Knowing how impetuous you are, let me emphasize that point. Later, of course, how well you communicate with your personalities will be an important factor. All at once, Oversoul 7 felt apprehensive. He heard the voice before Cypress did, because it was directed to him. Tweety, Tweety. That's a human voice, Cypress said. How can that be? No humans should be able to reach us here. Maybe it's a mistake, Seven said weakly, but already it was too late. Is it time yet? Asked the voice. Go back where you came from, Seven said desperately. No, it's not time yet, and for all I know it may never be. But I'm all ready, said the voice. No, you aren't. That's just the trouble, Seven said. If you were, you'd have better sense. This is my superior, by the way. Oh, Tweety, cried the voice, desolate. Tweety? Cypress asked. We're old friends. It's Daga. Whenever Daga's a female, she calls me Tweety. Right now, she's a female and helping me with my independent study. At least we think she's female. When I call her Tweety. In confusion, Seven took on the 14-year-old form again. Earth language doesn't have any words for what we really are. No, pronouns for beings that are male and female at once, so it makes explanations difficult. We aren't ready to go into your independent study yet, Cypress said, but I must admit that I'm curious, and I must note that you seem to have some difficulty in keeping track of your various projects. See, Oversoul 7 said. Daga, please go away. If you insist, the voice said. But I've got my birth date planned and... Go away, Seven cried in consternation. Cypress pretended not to hear, she said. I'll presume that you'll have a good explanation for this later on. Now, if you don't mind, let's go down to the scheduled phases of your examination. Oversoul 7 tried not to be nervous. All right, he said. Let's look in on Lydia. I certainly hope she's having a good day. First, there's a few things I'd like to explain about her. Sorry. From now on, I must see for myself, Cypress said. Seven sighed. He thought of Lydia, lovingly brought her image into his awareness until it filled him, taking precedence over all the other territories in his many selves. together, and he and Cypress blinked off and on road piggyback and on a million molecules and emerged. And that's the end of chapter 1. We'll come back on this tomorrow.